and welcome to the 31st episode of Course Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I'll be talking about 5 women from Bible times that I admire and why. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you'd like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome. I'm your host, Cora, and I am so excited to have you on this journey with me. Before I get into today's topic, I want to share today's truth talk. Today's truth is, God has you in the palm of his hand. The verse I think fits this truth the most is, Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me. That is Isaiah 49, verse 16 in the English Standard Version. God hasn't forgotten about you, and he has your name on his hands. It will never come off. That's how much he loves you. Now, sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy today's episode. Today, I want to talk about 5 women from Bible times that I find inspiring and why. The 5 women that I have chosen to discuss for this episode are Mary Magdalene, Esther, Hannah, Mary, the sister of Martha, and Mary, the mother of Jesus. I chose those women in particular because they all have unique stories. It's not just them, though. Even we have our own unique stories. I have shared parts of my life story on the podcast before in previous episodes, so if you would like to hear my story, feel free to go back and listen to those previous episodes. The first woman that I want to discuss today is Mary Magdalene. I enjoyed watching her story in Season 1, Episode 1 of The Chosen. It was so beautiful, and the verse they shared in that episode was really beautiful too. They had shared Isaiah 43, verse 1. I also enjoyed Season 2, Episode 6, where Mary starts falling into her old sins again. There is a scene in that episode where she talks with Jesus in a tent, and when I first watched that scene, I thought it was so beautiful because it reminded me that I can always go to God, broken or hurting, and he will still love, redeem, and accept me. I don't have to be perfect to come to God. In fact, he doesn't want me to come to him perfect, and I can't be perfect. I am a sinner in desperate need of a loving, caring, and gracious Savior. I don't have to wait until I'm put back together to come to God. I can run to him just as I am, even when I am broken and hurting. I can't put myself back together on my own. I need God's help in order to get put back together. That scene was so amazing, beautiful, and a much needed reminder for me in my own heart. If we try to wait until we are perfect to go to God, that moment will never come. We live in a fallen world that will not ever be perfect because of sin. However, there is good news for those of us who are Christians. God promises to, one day, restore the world back to the way it was originally intended to be before sin had entered. Plus, those who are Christians will get to live with Jesus forever in heaven. I really enjoy The Chosen. I would recommend it for anyone interested in watching that show. Just like how I'm sure everyone else desires or feels at some point in their lives, Mary Magdalene wanted to feel seen, loved, noticed, heard, and recognized. The only one who could truly do that for her, and that can do that for us, is Jesus. I know that feeling more seen and loved is something I desire for my own life on a regular basis. If you don't feel that way right now, I am so sorry. I can't necessarily speak for all of you, but I know that I personally crave to be seen, known, heard, and acknowledged in my own life. I want to have deep connections with people I love so I can grow even closer to them as well. I don't ever want to feel alone. However, sometimes that is a reality for people. Please reach out to me if you ever need someone to talk to. I would love to help in any way I possibly can. I want to be able to support you when you need help, but I can't do that if I don't know how I can. Some things I may not be able to do if I don't live close to you, but I can definitely pray for and with you, talk with you, offer advice if it's a situation I have faced, or something like that. Even if we do live close to each other, I still may not be able to do some of those things, but I still want to do whatever I can to help. The next woman that I want to talk about is Esther. Esther was a Jewish queen. She had a relative named Mordecai. Mordecai would sometimes sneak into the palace while she was queen to tell her about things that Haman, an official of the king, was doing to try to hurt the Jews, their people. Esther tried to put a stop to Haman's evil scheme by hosting dinners for him and the king a couple of nights. Eventually, after Esther had gathered enough courage to reveal Haman's plan to the king during dinner one of those evenings, she revealed Haman's plan, and Haman was hanged on the gallows that he had intended to be for Mordecai. I think Esther was very brave. She showed courage in a time she wasn't sure what would happen to her or her people. I want to emulate that in my life when I face a hard situation. As of the recording of this episode, we actually just studied the book of Esther in a small group I attend at my church. Something I thought was interesting about Esther's story is how she chose to trust that God would care for her no matter what happened in her situation and how she trusted God to protect her. Next, I think Hannah's story was interesting. She wasn't able to have kids for a long time. She went to the temple and prayed diligently that she would be able to have children. She did finally have a son who she named Samuel. After a little bit of time when he was old enough, Hannah took Samuel back to the temple to dedicate him to God and to let him live with Eli. That is such a hard sacrifice to make, but she did it because she wanted to serve and honor God. We, as Christians, need to dedicate our lives to serve and honor God. Something that I thought was interesting about Hannah is that she chose to give back to God her son, even though she had prayed for and desired to have a child for a while. Mary, the mother of Jesus, showed trust in God even despite being scared. She wasn't married when the angel came to tell her that she would have a son who would one day become the savior of the world. She was terrified because she was still pretty young, and she wasn't married yet, but had just heard that she would be the mother to the savior of the world. That would be a really scary situation to be in. If I was in that same situation, I would be so scared. Mary took a huge step of faith by trusting in God. If God was faithful to stay present with Mary through that and to help her through that, why wouldn't He be faithful to be with and help us through whatever we face in our own lives? He is faithful and powerful enough to do that. It may not always feel like it, but He really does want to help us through our trials. The final one I want to talk about is Mary, Lazarus and Martha's sister. Even though Martha got frustrated with Mary for sitting with Jesus instead of helping with the housework, Mary was completely and totally dedicated to spending time with Jesus and learning from Him. If Jesus was in my house, I would rather sit with Jesus and learn from Him instead of doing housework too, so I can understand why Mary was sitting with Him and not doing the housework with Martha. I am not at all saying that doing housework is bad, but I think spending time being with and learning from Jesus needs to be a much higher priority in our lives than we sometimes make it to be. I want my faith in God to grow as a result of spending time with Him. He has so many lessons to teach us, and He wants us to spend time with Him too. He loves when we spend time with Him. We have to be willing to make an effort to spend time with Him. When we don't spend time with Him, that will make our days much harder to get through, and we won't have the necessary armor to fight Satan and his lies with. I need to be better about spending time with God more in my own life and learning how to fight against Satan. Fighting Satan's lies isn't easy, but it is possible, and it can be so beneficial too. All of these women that we have talked about in this episode each have different qualities about them that I want to emulate in my own life more often. Qualities like trusting God even when it's hard or scary, spending quality time with Jesus, following God, sacrificing to God something you have wanted and desired for so long, like in Hannah's case, it could be a longing for children, choosing courage instead of giving into fear, being brave even in the face of extremely scary situations, and spending time growing in our faith. It is not easy to do those things, but when we do that, that makes our faith so much stronger and better. We need to trust God when we go through hard things. We have to keep our eyes on Jesus during trials. If we don't keep our eyes on Jesus, we will start looking to the world. Then, our minds will spin and make us believe lies about ourselves or our situations. I don't like when my mind starts to spin. I want my mind to stay focused on Jesus, even in the midst of trials. As a reminder, today's truth talk was, God has you in the palm of His hand. The verse I think fits this truth the most is, "Behold, I have engraved you on the palm of my hands. Your walls are continually before me." That is Isaiah 49:16 in the English Standard Version. God hasn't forgotten about you, and He has your name on His hands. It will never come off. That's how much He loves you. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment and a review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org, send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook, or a voice message through the link in the show notes, and I will get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next week for the 32nd episode.